Before the arrival of Europeans and missionaries in West Africa, we read from the book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe that life was natural. There were no major diseases. Life that the Bantus lived is exposed and taught and explained in the phenomenal book Things Fall Apart was so natural and so wonderful. It is part of what I want to explain today. This book, Things Fall Apart, I read it in the early 70s as extracts in a book of English that we were given in primary school to study. The book was called Day by Day English. And when I was doing my secondary education, it was one of the books that were selected to be studied and read. This book, Things Fall Apart, introduces you to the life of melanin-dominant human beings, Bantus, Africans, before Christianity, before colonization, before enslavement, and before the modern times and modern technology. The life of Igbos, a hero in the book Okonkwo, was based on an agricultural type of life that followed the cycles of the year: harvest, planting, weeks of peace, dry season, and it would repeat again. But the life was not dull. It was all-encompassing, full of activities. The first chapters of Things Fall Apart introduces you to wrestling, which was one of the greatest sports and performed by the Igbos. And you realize when you read Things Fall Apart that success during that time was measured not by your heritage, not by what your ancestors did, but what you did yourself. So you find Okonkwo coming from very, very challenging background. His father, Unoka, was like a really laissez-faire man, lazy, not really a hard worker. He was a musician, good with the flute. And the village life then, there were sections where people that were ostracized from society were thrown in, whether they were still alive or whether they were dying, they were thrown in a certain section. There were also sections where the Igugus, who are the gods and the deities of the tribe, used to dwell and come from. There was also a priesthood. We see a priestess dominating the life there. And they would have sacrifices and offerings and prayers to various gods. Amat Diora, the god of lightning, and so many, many others. And there was also the python, which was revered and honored amongst the Igbos. The life explained in the book Things Fall Apart of the people, the Igbo society, is totally and completely similar to any other indigenous society that you can find elsewhere. So if you want to learn something about West Africa, specifically in a place now they call Nigeria, this book, Things Fall Apart, is one of the best books that can introduce you to the life that ancient people prior to Christianity, Islam, and Judaism lived. You can see the traditions, the food, the life that they live, the culture, marriage. You can see the relationships between father, mother, between our parents and children, the delegation of duties and delegation of roles, where a man would do his specified roles, without the confusion that the man might be a woman or something like what we are seeing today. The man would grow up to be a father of a family, to guide, to make life for his children comfortable, building a compound, a home, comfortable home. Then there would be the fields where they would work. They would have animals which they would keep. They would have deities which they would do, and festivals they would attend. And that was the life, totally linked with what we would call animism and totemism, which is basically the issue that there is no melanin-dominant human being, there is no African, there is no black person, there is no Negro who does not have two totems. If you come to the point where you don't have totems, you are disconnected to your gods, you are disconnected to your ancestry, you are disconnected from your bloodline, and you have been connected to something else. As time moved on, we find Okonkwo fighting battles of poverty and becoming a very successful person in society, to the point of rising up to become one of the lords and gods of the tribe. And then something would happen, and which would chop off his life. during the week of peace, which they observed, which we know today is the week of harvest, that we celebrate the month of March as Marifado, Okonkwo's gun exploded during a festival and killed somebody. He was exiled away from the village. It was during that time of his exile that another phenomenon started to rise. The tribe's weaknesses started to mount up, and a new religion started to approach. What we learn from things fall apart are the tactics and the strategies that Christianity used to penetrate and disembowel societies and take over societies. There is a Mr. Brown, very weak, very smiling man all the time. They took him for granted. And he came there, he had already interpreters who had learned how to speak the Igbo language, but with a twist here and there. And then they started to preach about Jesus. Initially, the whole community laughed at them, asked silly questions according to Christianity. If this God had a son, he must have a wife. Who was his wife then? And they would realize that this is a useless religion. And they allowed them to stay, and they sang music. Unfortunately, some of the members of the Igbo tribes, just like all over Africa, started to be attracted to the simplicity of Christianity. On the right-hand side, to enforce Christianity, there were the colonizers. There was the native commissioner, and they had already recruited a lot of other Igbos to join the forces. And the law was that you cannot kill your own brother. You cannot shed your own brother. So these people that converted to Christianity were the ones now propounding and pushing it forward. The simplicity of Christianity, the simplicity of their communal meals, the simplicity of their religion appealed to some of the members. And with the time, when Okonkwo came back, expecting to see his tribe strong and fighting, he realized that his tribe has weakened or was weakened, and there was a division and a lot of division. Even one of his sons was converted to Christianity. Even many prominent people started to throw away the military to Bengus. They throw away everything, and they would now go to have the communal, the Last Supper, where they drink a little bit of wine and say this is the blood of Jesus, and eat a little piece of bread, say this is the body of Jesus. And therefore, as Okonkwo tries to reset himself, he realized that all things have fallen apart. And he said in the book, Nwoye said, the white man has put a knife on the things that held us together, and all things have fallen apart. So when you look at this book, although this is a fiction, and you look at what it has explained and exposed and given us, and when you think of King Leopold's letter, that it said, go and confuse these people and let them not engage in their mystic system or their war fetish system. And once that is done, we lost power and things have fallen apart. This book is a must for anyone who wants to have a very entertaining but powerfully educational journey into the phenomenon that we know as colonization by religious infiltration. Your manager to be Priest Rabbi LM says yes. Join us at Marifado Family Network. Send us an email on join@marifado.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day.